All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's Coach Greg here with you. I have Coach Brad with me. Coach Dustin is away today. He'll join us back again next week. Okay, we're going to dive right into it. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about when too good is no good. Okay, so it seems like a contrary because as we set this up just before we cut to the intro, training should always be about one thing, and that's getting better. Right? And for most people, the aspiration is not just get good, it's to get great, and not just get great, but get phenomenal or world class. Most people just want to continuously improve and they want to get better, okay? But when is too good no good? Is that possible? We're going to explore it tonight, and I want to warn you, the answer is probably not what most people are going to expect. So back in 30 seconds, hang with us. Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LeBuff, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, so listen, I set it up. Tonight we're going to talk about when too good is no good. Okay, so is it possible? Training should always be about improving, always about getting better. For most people, I mean, that's what drives them, right? You know, most people don't enter into something and say, listen, I'm happy just being mediocre or below mediocre or subpar. That's not what most people want. Most people want to get good. Most people want to get great. Most people want to get phenomenal. So when it comes to preparing or weaponizing against violence, okay, is there such a thing as too good? Okay, and if so, when does too good become no good? First, let's just get a visceral response, Brad. You don't have to go into any depth, but just kind of a more straightforward yes or no to a degree. But can you actually get too good? What's your contextual take on this?
I think yes. Like I have a thought in my mind about where I think being too good would be detrimental.
Okay.
I think it could create some blind spots. I'll put it at that, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Actually, you know what? Why don't you set it up for me? Why don't you express your thought for us?
So, kind of when you asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind about how being too good could be no good is because if you're too good at one thing, your likelihood of chasing that thing or trying to manifest that thing, right? When that may not be the best thing to do. So you're like, it could create biases. Is one way I think being too good could be no good. And then when you think about weaponizing, there's a lot of aspects to defending yourself against violence, like true predatory violence. It's not just one thing that you need to be good at. You need to be good at multiple things. So instead of being the best at one specific thing on the weaponization process, there's more at stake, and there's more things to be. You have to be able to handle it all. So that's kind of where my initial thoughts went to.
Yeah. No,
Sure
that's great. Yeah, 100%. No, it's good. It's good. And again, like most topics, they're multidimensional. You can look at it from different ways. And so again, creating a bias, you become really good, really dominant at one thing, and so then you can't help but want to, when everything's a nail, you want to hammer it. Like your perception again determines what are we going to focus on and what's the meaning we attach to. So we start seeing things through the lens of the bias. And so absolutely you can start changing it. So in that essence, you can become so good at one thing or too good at one thing that it literally stops serving you. So that absolutely is one angle to it. I'll throw another angle into it. Let's say we take somebody who actually does cross train. So they train in multiple disciplines, like a mixed martial arts or something like that. So most people would say, universally, most people would agree that there's 4 ranges of combat, right? Kicking, punching, close quarter, and ground, okay, or clinch and ground, whatever term they want to put to it. But those are the 4 ranges of hand-to-hand combat. So let's say you have somebody that trains in all 4. So then they would say, well, there you go. That's what helps prevent that bias. So now you're free to get as good as you possibly can in those 4 ranges. Now, yes, that can prevent a bias. Now, even within that, out of the 4 ranges, most people will have a proclivity to 1 or maybe 2 of those ranges, right? So your concept still absolutely applies. I just might go, well, listen, I've always had great flexibility, and I got, height or long legs or something, whatever, powerful legs. And you've just become a kicker. Like, you got really, really devastatingly good kicks. Maybe you happen to spend the younger years in Thai boxing, so you have an extra 6, 7 years of development in that, whatever it is. So you can have a proclivity to one of these ranges or an art or something like that. So the bias could still exist. But just for argument's sake, let's say you're even across all four. Okay, so you do your stand up, you do your clinching, you do your ground, and your skills are rounded, your attributes are rounded, all that kind of stuff. Another way that I feel like people can, where you can get so good that it can actually be not good, is that the kind of the structure or framework with which you're training in, meaning that I said that all training ultimately should be about getting better. And I 100% believe that. Every time you train, it should make you better. Now, what I want to do is kind of introduce, and this is just a terminology that I'm attaching to this. So it's very general, but it's important that we can distinguish what I'm talking about. If I looked at like a commercial approach to martial arts, meaning what? Meaning like commercial gyms. Like, if you just, you Google martial arts in Edmonton, you're going to come up with 20, 30 different martial arts schools, variant of styles, disciplines, all that type of stuff. Well, the commercial approach would dictate that when a student comes in, everybody starts at the basics, right? So you say, well, listen, somebody with no experience, you start them at the basics, and then it is a progression from basic up through to more advanced techniques, okay? Now, most people say, okay, this makes sense. But also with this commercial approach, if you're going from a basic to advanced, then for most people, that also stands to reason that basic means few. Like, where do you start? Do you start with how you stand? Do you start with, movement, like, shrimping techniques in jiu-jitsu? Is it like a boxing stance for boxing? Is it then a basic jab, a basic shrimp motion, a basic armbar, like whatever it is? It's basic meaning few. So as somebody progresses and as they move through their basics, progressing towards intermediate and then ultimately advanced, often that comes with an accumulation, a progression, meaning that more and more techniques and tools and strategies are stacked in, because theoretically, as you are getting better and improving, then you can grow, you can add more stuff on. Now, if we could draw this out on a chart, I would submit that even in this commercial approach, you start at basics. So let's say we're way down on one side of the chart, and you slowly progress through, and some more additional things get added on. Well, this seems normal, right? But there's going to be a point when you're going to come to an apex. And the apex is where you have this combination of like the right amount of accumulated strategies, tactics, and tools, the right amount of developed attributes and understanding and athleticism, and then you're going to hit this kind of point of functional to a certain end goal. Like, so people hit this, like, you become competent. So let's say, like most people would say, I'll become consciously competent. Okay? And then at that point, I believe that in the commercial approach to things, that continues to build, but it actually starts to go outside of, it has the potential to go outside the realm of useful or functional. And let me just expand this out. For a lot of commercial businesses, it's a business. And so therefore, one of the factors is client retention. Like, I want to retain customers. Very few businesses have the end goal from the beginning of making somebody truly autonomous, meaning I got to give you the skill sets, give you the knowledge, give you the understanding so that you can functionally achieve whatever the end goal of why you came here in the first place was. I got to reach this achievement. We have to, reach a crucible benchmark for you. And so at a certain point, it becomes about more. So in a martial art, we're going to show you more techniques. We're going to show you more ways to armbar, more ways to choke, more ways to ankle lock, more ways to punch, more ways to strike, more ways to block, more ways to move, more ways to counter, more. Because as often more means new. And new means less boredom. and it keeps people going like benchmarking. It keeps putting the cheese in front of the mouse and the cheese in front of the mouse, and the mouse kind of keeps wanting to go. And if you got the sizing of the cheese right, they'll continue to eat without getting full. It's a silly analogy maybe, but I want people to understand this approach to it. Now, right away we have to talk about what was the end goal, because in a lot of cases, in a commercial, recreational, business application, what's the problem? Well, potentially there is no problem with that. Matter of fact, not only is there no problem, it's just fucking makes sense. It's good, sound business practice, right? To have a product that people can continuously buy or consume and continue to move through, and you take the LTV, the long-term value of a customer, and you try to expand that out from not a year, not 3 years, but if you can get them up to 10 years, the LTV, the long-term value of that client to monetarily to that business is massive. And that is, again, the essence of being in business. Where we can, again, kind of pull on this, and I think most people can see where I'm potentially going with this, is does that change if the original goal, had like a severe consequence of failure, so failing to be prepared to meet the goal or meeting that goal, has severe consequence, severe and immediate personal consequences to the individual that is there to say, this is what I'm looking to do. That is a very big factor that has to be weighed in. And then does that then change the overall strategy, like the approach? So now what you're doing is saying, well, that kind of almost is in contrast to a commercial for-profit business model. For most people, right? Does that kind of make sense where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So I look at it this way, because let me throw out what I feel like I'm faced with. For me personally, in weaponizing, I say, okay, listen, most of my clients have zero experience, never experienced violence, have no understanding, no experience, no martial arts, they have zero. So they're starting from zero. They come to me because they have a very specific goal. And that goal is they want to be able to protect themselves and their family. And the reason that the motivation for them actually taking action to come here is not theoretical or hypothetical. It's reality based, meaning either they've already experienced violence and feel like they were given a gift of a second chance, meaning they weren't murdered, they survived it, or they have had something they've seen or experienced, maybe second hand, third hand, has impacted them in a manner where they can no longer deny that there's evil in this world, right? There's bad people that if you give them half a chance, they want to hurt you. So either way, they're coming with a very realistic goal. So for me, I have no choice but from the very beginning, from day one, to run off of the belief that they will, in fact, and they and their families will find themselves facing imminent grievous bodily harm or death. They will find themselves inside of a violent criminal assault. Now, I have no idea when that'll happen. I just have to run off the belief that it will happen. So the second that hits, the goal is then time becomes the greatest gift, because I have no idea how much time I have. So then all of a sudden, the commercial model will not work. I don't have the luxury of starting from basics with the sole intention of progressively escalating into advanced strategies, tactics, tools, attribute development, all this stuff, with the long-term, event horizon being, how long can I keep them as a customer? What's the average length it takes someone to get a black belt? Well, you could say 7 years, 10 years, depending on training time, attribute, all these different things. But clearly, do we need to have the black belt to be functional? Well, no. But there's this end state where it's like, well, we have this, you have to commit to this. So they take a much longer arc or event horizon. For me, it's like that has to be condensed. We don't go progressively escalating. We actually go progressively de-escalating to a degree, meaning the most advanced stuff we have, we call it like the tools you live and die by. What's going to save? What are the strategy tactic tools that are going to save your life? So, quote unquote, by other people's standards, the most advanced stuff is on the front end. It's like that's the foundation. That's not just the foundation. That's the whole fucking house. Like that's what has to be there. And I know people then would question and say, well, how do you do that if they have no experience? But again, the commercial model is we're going to show you advanced strategies, tactics, and tools also often mean more intricate. Meaning you got a guy starts in Taekwondo and the guy can't touch his toes. And it's like, well, listen, to do some of our most advanced kicks, wheel kicks, jumps, you need to increase your flexibility. This may be a process of 2 or 3 years, and as you gain this flexibility and increase range of motion, then these more advanced techniques become on the table for you, right? They become possible. Whereas for us, the most advanced techniques cannot, in violence, be predicated off superior athleticism. The most, and if I was to ask you, what are the most functional, advanced strategies, tactics, and tools that we do, what's the one thing that they all have in common?
Simplicity.
Simplicity, meaning that, the least amount of attributes, the least amount of effort or time invested into learning and training them with the highest return.
Yeah.
And that's, people would say, well, gross motor based, the strategies, tactics, and tools have to more viscerally and naturally integrate with the human weapon system, meaning the innate survival program that we are all born with, that has had 200,000 years of evolution. Like it's a physiological system that integrates with the human weapon system. So it's not a foreign entity that you then have to go, well, they'd say in boxing, the sweet science, there's nothing natural about boxing. Boxing is a science. It's the sweet science. It's taught to you. From how you position yourself to how the punches are, it's not based off natural motions. It's a science. It's an art that is taught to you. Okay, perfect. Well, for the expediency of violent conflict, where time is a massive factor, then you cannot take that commercial art-based progression.
Yeah.
Right? Now, go ahead. Yeah.
It seems like if you look at a timeline with the commercial model, and I'm going to use attributes because it's kind of the word that's stuck in my head, where it's like you talk about the basic to the advanced, and it's like it seems like the commercial model says, okay, well, in order to get up the scale to advanced, you need better attributes. So they're starting by saying like they're building attributes to get you somewhere, right? Where it's like, you're right, you're not looking at a timeline. You don't have that overall objective at the forefront of your mind and taking a time constraint and saying, well, what if we don't have that time, right? Like when we're weaponizing, it's like, we may not have the time, the luxury of it. We hope that we do. But then you give everything possible, strategy, tactics, tools, and then should you have the time, you could build those attributes out into those strategy, tactics, tools to make you more efficient because you have the time. I think the other thing that's stuck in my mind too is that when you're building like on the commercial model, do they tie that back to the overall mission demands, right? Are they mission focused with the saying, okay, well, these attributes are good. They're going to make you better, but in what context, right?
100%, yeah. Well, there's two things, and I'm going to just give a different spin on exactly what you said to help clarify for people. But the whole point of, like, again, if you're in a martial art, and if that's a combative sport martial art where the opportunity to compete is there, they get to choose when. Like, you can have a guy that joined and he's been there for 5 years, and you're like, hey, like, you're really, like, you've really shown some consistent dedication, and you've really, over the last 5 years, you've really changed and grown. And I really think as your instructor that, the experience of competing would be just another step in your development. And I think it would be really, really good for you. Just a simple local tournament, nothing serious, more for fun, but it's good for you because you learn all these great things and stuff. And so, but whether that happens at year 3 or year 5 or year 7 is completely up to you. It's personal choice. There is no time constraint pressure. For somebody that comes in that wants to compete, they may really double down on their efforts and focus, and they are within a year they're doing some competitions, right? And within 3 to 5 years they're doing very high level competitions. That's awesome, and that's good. And again, it fits with the commercial model. Therefore, it is excellent. It is perfect. It is as it should be. Our thing was, so when is too good no good? So if we come back to the model of saying, listen, we have this time constraint, just like you're saying, what I need to introduce people to is the concept of self-preservation versus self-perfection. And this is what's going to separate this, because even in the weaponizing process, let's say, where you say, oh, there's this time constraint, so we got to take the most advanced stuff and put it on the front end. You got to build this foundation because you got to get them from zero to formidable in the most expedient manner possible because you may not have the time. So let's say you do this, you build this out. And then you say, okay, so we hit that arc. So we take the advanced stuff, we teach, we hit this thing where you go, okay, we have taken you from zero to formidable. Now, formidable doesn't mean that's the end. You can go from formidable to tactical. Like there's a whole other level of progression that you can go. You say, well, isn't that now going to higher levels of advancement? It can, well, it is. But here's why the self-preservation versus self-perfection is so critical to understand. And that's really what I want to get across to people. Once we get people to this level of formidable, where I'm saying, listen, with the time we've had, these are the fundamental strategies, tactics, and tools that will save your life. This is the shit you're going to live and die by. So you can execute, read it, pull the trigger on it, and this is giving you the best odds of surviving at this moment. Okay? Now, every day that we get the luxury of more time, the goal for us, because you say, well, you've given them all the best tools, like this is the most advanced stuff. So you don't then start teaching them dumb stuff. Like you don't start saying, well, this is really basic beginner shit that you'd probably never do and are never going to need it, because that would be increasing their tools. Like you don't want more tools, because more tools means increased reaction time, means, that's decreasing. More is decreasing your likelihood of survival. I mean, Bruce Lee had a concept, right? It's a daily decrease, not a daily increase. Yet people would look at how he trained and how diligent he was and how world-class he was and think for all the years and every day and every year that he trained, was he not getting better? And say, yes, yet he was still embarking on a process of daily decrease. And so the self-preservation versus self-perfection would hopefully allow people to see this. What we do is say the self-preservation is the shit you're going to do. It's the shit it's the live and die shit. Now what we do is say, okay, we've got you to this point. So now you've got all these strategy tactic tools to live and die by shit. So now what we're going to do with every day, every week, every month, every year that we are blessed with more time, where our righteous fight has not found us, we are still drawing breath into our lungs, we are going to balance out. We are going to continue to drill, to train, to scenario our live and die skill set. So we're not changing those things. You've learned them from day one, and on year 5, year 10, year 15, year 25, year 35, you're still sharpening those strategies, tactics, and tools. Because obviously people would understand, like a boxer, that's the one great quality about fighters over typically over martial artists. Fighters, a boxer, year 1, a boxer year 30 is still sharpening his jab. He's still sharpening his bobs and weaves and his jab cross hook combinations. He's still using the core boxing because fighters understand that's the tools you live and die by in the ring. That's the equivalent. But what we do is with all of that additional time, we use self-perfection. And self-perfection strategies and drills and tools are not meant, they do not increase, they do not add to the repertoire of our self-preservation skill sets and knowledge. That is like the simple paint by numbers, this is what I need to do to survive. They develop the attributes that allow us to better implement the self-preservation. And that's where the growth comes. Now, could we do that backwards? Because listen, in the weaponizing, there we draw from different arts, right? So obviously we use some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in what we do. We use some Kali in what we do. We use some Wing Chun in what, like, I mean, it's these it comes from somewhere. And what I have seen is people weaponize, get functional, and then there can be, if it's not presented properly, if for people that don't understand how to use self-perfection, they get drawn into the filler of the arts. Meaning that, you can get someone that's like, how much jujitsu, like, do you need a black belt in jujitsu to defend yourself in a street assault, in a violent assault? Do you need the black belt? Do you need to be like the highest rank or highest level in Thai boxing or have competed in, you do not need the highest levels out of arts. I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 1993, right? Guys that started jiu-jitsu in, 2013 have reached black belt level. I don't have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't have any belt in jiu-jitsu other than recently because one of the guys that I first started training jiu-jitsu, who now is a first degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, keeps offering me belts because he's like, you should be this belt. You should be this belt. And I'm like, but I don't agree with him and I don't care. And here's the reason why I don't agree with him. Because someone legitimately, like really deep diving into jiu-jitsu, they are learning all of the quote unquote advanced techniques. Now, I'll give you this. I've been doing it for so long, consistently training and rolling. I've rolled with, some of the best guys in the world, learned from some of the best guys in the world. And I understand the core fundamentals of like positioning, position. I understand how to do that stuff. I have never bothered because I don't need to get into the intricacies of all of the submissions. Because the amount of submissions that I would need or anybody else would need in a life and death street assault, like violent assault with criminals, is minuscule. You don't need all of this myriad of techniques. Now, listen, can some of those advanced techniques, if you happen to know them, could they come into play and save your life? Of course they could. Of course they could. But the years of singular dedication that it would take to unlock that skill set is it's not worth, like it's time invested versus return. The time invested is not, you do not get the return out of it when there are so many other of that, like, so I get to that same position, but I don't need that technique. There are other strategies, tactics, tools within our core live and die by tools that work 9 out of 10 times they work better because they're directly wired for violence versus is worked out of a chess match against another skilled jiu-jitsu player. It's two totally different things, right? So there's this pinnacle, like this inverted curve where you start learning and going up and up and up and up and up and up and you get good. And then if you start now continuing to work those tools till they become unconsciously competent, like you don't even have to think about them. They're like walking to you. They're second nature. And that takes time. But that takes time invested in those tools to continue to sharpen them. I often think of the analogy like a samurai sword or making a blade where they fold the metal 100 times or 200 times. And it's like, at 50 times, most people probably go, that's pretty fucking good. It's pretty fucking sharp. It's going to stab most people, but they keep folding it and keep folding because there's a quality that they looked for or a standard. And so you take these self-preservation tools, you work, develop, you hit the apex of that. And then you continue to hone and sharpen those and you do continue to get better, but not with minus the increase of just filler. And if you don't understand how to then say, well, now what we're going to also do, now the power is we're going to build your timing. We're going to build your spatial awareness and your footwork and your rhythm and your, different types of 6 different types of speed. And we're going to work on, so you start taking all of these attributes. But here's the thing with the self-perfection. The self-perfection cannot be eclectic. It cannot be a shotgun of self-perfection. Although, a shotgun of self-perfection is still going to benefit you, but not as directly as a systemized self-perfection system that is a direct support system, meaning the self-perfection that you are working, the attributes that you are growing are directly related and most dramatically synergize your self-preservation tools. That's the interconnected knowledge, and that is the interconnectedness of the self-perfection and self-preservation. That it's like, to me, it's like you've got the rocket ship, but you need the booster. The booster's got to be directly underneath the rocket ship. Like it's got to give you lift. And so that is where you now avoid this. You can get good, great, phenomenal, world-class. You can just continue to go up the scale of good and improvement and phenomenal and all that stuff without running the danger of becoming where good is too good, to where you're overloaded with all of this stuff. And I'll just throw one caveat in and then give me your feedback off it. There are always going to be exceptions to the rule. There are always going to be individuals that are talented motherfuckers, meaning that they get good at the core stuff, and then you start showing them all this advanced stuff. And they are learning more and more. I could do this kick and that punch and this takedown and this submission and that submission. They got 50, 60, 80 variations of each thing, and they can do it. They can do it against badass motherfuckers, and they're pulling off shit that is like, it's again, there's always the high-end players. There's always the Gretzkys. There's always the Lemieux, the Connor McDavids, and then go down from that. If you're an Edmonton fan, you might argue, but there's the Draisaitl's, like, who's better, McDavid or Draisaitl? Like, a lot of people may debate that. I'm saying there's the first line guys, there's the second line guys. There's always people that can do this stuff. But I'll tell you what, there is 100x, if not 1,000x more that can't do that. When the more someone tries to make them really, really good in the sense of like all this new, advanced, more, they implode. It's too much, especially in the context of violence. So that's kind of how I see this, where too good, can be no good, right? Okay, any feedback off that?
Yeah, it made me think about just kind of even where the focus is, right? Like let me share a story about kind of reflecting on my journey. I can't kick worth shit. You mean why I bring that up for a couple of reasons, because like I could kick. I know how to kick. I think my kicks, like if I ever needed to kick someone, right, which isn't my fucking go-to thing at all. If I needed to, I could probably kick them, right? But like that's like I'm not kicking anybody in the head. I'm not kicking anybody. Like I don't have that. And why that came out, because it was something that I've thought about, like as a coach and as an instructor. It's like, fuck, like I can't kick. Like I'm not a professional kicker. Do you know what I mean? And I always thought that, well, what if someone's like, well, dude, like, well, what about your kick? Like, but that's not that was never where I took my attributes and really honed into that skill set. Right? I built a tremendous amount of attributes for the weaponizing process, for the tools that I live and die by, and kicking is not one of those main tools, right? It's a secondary. So if I use it, I have a good, like, yeah, I could kick, but I would never put myself in a classification of someone who's a kicker. Do you know what I mean? So, but it's like, that's just it. Like, I don't need, and I also don't need to be.
No, and to qualify that too, like the kicks that you are good at, the kicks that you are world class at, don't require the attributes of kicking like a martial art kick. They're the low line Punninjachman kicking, like they're, tip of the shoe to the shin, like they're shit that, like I would ask you, just to clarify, how do you feel you are with the kicks that are what we would consider to be some of the primary kicks that we use? Where do you rate yourself on your level of ability within those kicks?
Oh yeah, super high, because they're easy.
But what I'm saying is like world class. Like let's say there's always the specimens out there. So you say, hey, I'm not the Wayne Gretzky, and I'll be the same boat with you. Although I was a good kicker back in the day, but I'd be like, oh, I'm not the Conor McGregor, but I'm Draisaitl. Like you know what I mean? Like I'm top of that second line for sure, because they're easy. But you notice that what's so interesting is you completely discounted those as kicks. You're like, I wouldn't even almost classify those as kicks, but they totally are kicks.
That's
They're
right.
functional, live and die by kicks, meaning that, oh yeah, but I could do those from day one. Those didn't require the same level of practice. But have you gotten better at them? Have you built the
Absolutely.
attributes to make those better?
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
Yes. But see, that's our point. But what you're saying is 100% true. You're like, but we've never gotten past, because in the weaponizing process, good are training every day. You got to get better. Every time you train, it should make you better. It's not repeating. You don't just practice. You got to get better. Okay, that's a whole different conversation of how you make sure that happens. But we've never gone into the thing of now more. Oh, like today you started, you don't have the attributes to do kicks, like real martial art kicks. So, but we're going to give those to you. You stick around long enough. Well, you've been here for 23, 24 years. If I think if you were going to have it, you should have it by now.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and most people might look at that and say, "Well, that guy's been around 24 years. He can't even kick. Like, show me a kick." And you're like, "Well, that's not a kick. What is that? Like, I could do that right now." Yeah, but that's all you need for combat. You don't need, like, matter of fact, the more you lift your leg, the dumber you are. Like, why would you do that? Especially in our fucking climate. You know what I mean? So yeah, that is exactly the point we're making, right? But again, if you had a different model, then that would be a deterrent. People would look at that and say, well, how come he has not developed that? He didn't get very good.
Well, if you think again about the commercial model, right? It's like, well, no, you need to be proficient in if they kick, and like obviously jujitsu is probably not a kicking not a kicking art, but whatever it happens to be, it's like no, like you need to be, to get to the next level, you got to be a better kicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, but that's not what we do. That doesn't have survival value in focusing time and energy and attributes and efforts just on becoming a better kicker.
Yeah. Well, I think that the best thing, I mean, that I can do right now is share with people my journey with it, because my journey has been one of regression in what most people hear that and say, well, that's doesn't sound good at all. I'll throw, Brad's a foodie, really, likes his food, knows his food and stuff. So he's our foodie of the group. So I'm going to use a foodie analogy, and I've been sitting on this all day, excited to share this with you, right? My journey and I don't label myself a martial artist. I don't consider myself to be a martial artist, although in one sense I can see where people, and yes, I can self-identify as it, but I'll explain why. My journey as a quote unquote martial artist is like a good reduction sauce. You know what I mean? It's like all of my attributes from when I got into weaponizing. I'd gone through traditional martial arts, I'd gone through the kickboxing, Thai boxing, combat sports side of things, right? But when I got into weaponizing, the reduction began. And, Brad knows, right? Like when you reduce a liquid, you're evaporating off things. And this is the Bruce Lee daily decrease, but you're creating this cohesion within this, getting rid of stuff, getting rid of filler. And so without, overstating anything, when I kickboxed, I had world-class kicks. The two guys I trained with were professional fighters. One ranked fifth in the world. They could both kick harder than me, but my kicks, and I don't think either one of them would dispute this, my kicks were like far superior in terms of kicking ability. Again, like they were good. Like I wasn't the pro fighter, so my kicks were really, really good. My boxing was never as strong. I didn't have the power. Decent technique, but I never had the power that they had. But my point is that I had certain things that I got really, really good at. And these like, so you cling to those because, like, listen, I'm not the pro fighter. I'm not the best of us. I'm just saying that my kicks and what I could do with my kicks and how I can control my kicks and all that stuff came to me far easier. As I went through the weaponizing process, they began a reduction process to where, like, I spent, 15 years of my life kicking, developed my kicks, to a very, very high level. And today I have trouble kicking over my waist. And that is because, it's not because of old age. It's because I stopped kicking over my waist because it wasn't a goal. When I started jiu-jitsu in 1993, the UFC just launched. People didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. They didn't know what Brazilian jiu-jitsu was. So when I was first learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu, we were doing a lot of submissions. because like obviously we're doing the positioning stuff, but we did it because it's exactly what Hoist did. Nobody knew. I remember going out and doing seminars, being down in California, doing seminars with my instructors back here in Canada myself. And if I'd go do a seminar and there's 30, 40 people in there, I would wrestle, and my instructors did it all the time in groups of 100 people, and you'd wrestle everybody there. And you'd have some, and of course, all the biggest dudes all went at the end. So you'd have wrestled 30 people before that, and then the three biggest guys in the room went, and you're just going back to back to back to back. And you could do it, and I could do it fairly effortlessly. Why? Because nobody knew what guard was. Nobody knew what a mount was. So everybody, tried to push out. You were triangle choking people. You were getting people, rear naked choking people, guillotining people, like ankle locking people. Like the submissions were powerful. And so I knew, from my shoot wrestling with Yuri Nakamura to the Inosanto Academy, I knew so many locks and submissions, and I trained and used them all because nobody knew any of it. And then obviously people know the evolution here, but from 1993 to 1998, massive changes started to happen. By the year 2000 or 2005, the game had changed. And so all of a sudden, all of the submissions that I knew, everybody else knew them too, plus the guys that were very specific in an art knew more. By 2020, by 2023, the myriad of locks and submissions that are out there, like the depth of that advanced knowledge is astronomical. It's almost, it would, for the average person, it's you cannot catch up with it. Like as much time and money and energy as you have and throw it, there's information there for you. So hopefully people can see a point when like it stopped being good, it started to be too eclectic. So then we had to go simpler. So I stopped the high kicking, all the martial art kicks, even though I was good at it. And I'm sharing that because it's not easy to do. When you're good at something and you're successful, far above average, meaning the average person that I would ever kickbox with, that even was in kickboxing, I was a far better kicker. Yes, there was people out there far better than me, but there was far more people worse than me than there was better than me. Right? Especially within a certain proximity, of course, where you're living and stuff. But I had to get rid of that. My jiu-jitsu, I was better than people because I knew things they didn't know. Then as that started to balance out, I had to start getting it's like don't run a race that you can't win. Not when it comes to protecting your life. There's no way to keep up with the advancements that were going on in jiu-jitsu and the younger, stronger, bigger, athletic, more focused and singularly dedicated guys are not just going to be a little better than you, they're going to be infinitely better than you. But when it comes to violence, we have constantly been this reduction. Meaning, what are the things that you need to do? What are the tools you truly need to live and die by? What are the strategies, tactics, and tools? And the reality is that you don't even need to be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Now, a purple belt would probably be a decent level there, but you don't need 90 to 95% of an art. You don't need it. You don't need to be the black, the brown, the blue, the purple belt, whatever it is. You typically don't need that. But the why I'm going to sound like I contradict myself. The only reason why you'd need to get there is because oftentimes the beginner stuff is not the stuff you live and die by. So you have to tend to work to the middle of the pack to start getting some of that stuff. But like the Gracies have a very powerful concept. Like the Gracies that teach their combatives program first. That's them taking their most combative stuff and putting it right up front and saying, you don't need to worry about jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu against another jiu-jitsu player is all after you've completed their combatives, meaning know how to defend yourself in a fight. Now, they're talking one-on-one in a street fight, but the point stands. They get you good. Then they say, well, this will make that better, but at the same time, we're going to show you more so that you can have this game, this play, and it's fun, and they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, it's like we don't have, like, our arc is not to then go into what happens, like, as weaponized human beings. We're not like, oh, what if you're on the street and you get in a friendly fight life and death fight with another guy who's a protector or a weaponized protector. Like, we're not meeting up and having protector tournaments, interclub protector. It's like the only thing we care about is, continuing what are the tools I live and die by, and the self-perfection system that boosts those attributes and gets you better and better and better at implementing the shit you live and die by, not increasing all the tools and stuff like that. Because again, I don't sit back and go, because I train, I'm undefeatable. Like I'm this Gretzky of attributes and this and that. It's matter of fact, it's like you have a very small window relative to your lifespan where you could be that guy. And then age and time and injuries and life and all this stuff, you begin to come down the other side of it. And so for us, the tools you live and die by, the self-preservation, that stuff just continues to stay with you. Your self-perfection modifies it. You can be in your 70s and still be absolutely fucking vicious and ruthless in terms of how you defend yourself. Most fighters, when they turn 70, their tools are non-existent for them anymore because their body's broken down. They can't kick and punch like they used to. And so I'm not against some Joe Schmo who's a loudmouth antisocial aggression situation, they'd probably still knock him out, probably. But against young violent criminals who are, you can't fight them. You've aged out of it. Whereas for us, the age, again, why the strategy time tools have to be the way they are is so that you don't age out of them. I mean, up until, late, and depending on health, because you can always modify. Weapons are a great compensator for age, right? So, I mean, a 7-year-old that has been training firearms or a 70-year-old's been training knife defense strategies for 30, 40 years, that's very different than a young, kickboxer. He'll talk about how he used to be able to kick and punch 30, 40 years ago. It's very, very different, right? That's a side tangent, sorry. But anyways, so I just want to, I thought it was an interesting topic of when too good is no good. And it's dangerous. I've seen it. And like I said, for the commercial application, you can just train in it and continually learn more and more and more and more knowledge and accumulate knowledge and skills and attributes. And a guy said, I've been doing it for 30 years and what I can do today versus what I could do then is amazing. And it's like, that's great. But it's because there was no hard necessity of like defending your life in a violent, like the worst type of situation you could ever possibly face. It was just a matter of like, it was a great way to stay in shape. It was something social. It's something I have an interest in. But it absolutely can be a detriment. You don't, again, a daily decrease, not a daily increase. There's, you don't, to me, violence was always like swimming upstream. You fall in a river and the current is moving so fast and you turn and start trying to swim into the current. And while you're doing that, somebody keeps throwing extra rocks on your back, like keep weighing you down. It doesn't work against violence. It's not the smartest way to go. Unless you're that exceptional athlete that is just a specimen among us, which there totally are people that are like that. And even that's going to be fleeting. Gretzky doesn't play anymore. You know what I mean? Why? Because he's not what he once was. So, that's why Randy Couture's and Tito Ortiz's and all these other guys, they're not, even the George St. Pierre, that's why they're not fighting anymore, because they're not who they used to be. George St. Pierre, look at that guy. That guy's nothing but fitness. He trains all the fucking time. He could not step back in the octagon. He'd be in a lot of trouble. There'd be a lot of guys I'm sure he could still whoop ass on. The guy is a specimen. He is a specimen. Most of us do not have that time and dedication and energy and money to do what he's done, right? So, anyways, I don't know. Hopefully this adds value to some people because you want a training process that aligns with your goals. If you want to get good and what you want to get good for is to weaponize against violence, then you're going to notice that there's all of the best stuff is in the beginning, and it's the self-perfection that supports the self-preservation and allows you to put a lifetime of training in without ever becoming bored, without ever just repeating yourself, I'm doing the same old shit over. No, the self-perfection is in such a way that you are constantly doing new things without adding on getting rid of old attributes, replacing with new attributes, and becoming more and more. Fold the metal, hammer it down. Fold the metal. You know, it's the same. It's a process of creating a samurai sword versus just getting better with all of this stuff. Okay, so anyways, I don't know, Brad. Any kind of other thoughts that you want to throw in on this?
You know what? You started off with the sauce analogy, and as someone
I knew
who
that'd get you.
have I been aware that I am a foodie, I'm gonna add to the analogy a little bit. So if we think of the sauce is the tools that we live and die by, right? If you keep adding to that sauce, it is going to be fucking confused and disjointed, and it's going to be terrible. Okay,
It's going to be nice.
and I'll put it this way: it won't be nice, right? Here's the thing: so when you reduce, when you do, so that's the tools that you live and die by, right? That's in the sauce. So the reduction process is the self perfection. That's the attribute development side of things. So when you reduce your sauce, you intensify the flavors,
That's right.
right? So as you like the attributes that you grow, they're going to intensify the tools that you live and die by, making those 100% better.
100%.
Very nice.
Yes.
It'll be very nice.
It'd be very nice. It's funny because I wrote down literally based off cooking, the definition of reduction is the process of thickening and intensifying the flavors. And you pulled that out. It's going to intensify the flavors. So, that just made my whole night. But you know what? It's a great analogy, right? Because that's what it is. And I'll just end it on the fact that, like, I often say, like, one of the quotes, all killer, no filler. And it's not meant to be like this braggadocious thing of like, oh, all killer. It's just the fact that all killer is like being focused on one thing, and that's people surviving. And violence is terrifying and it's scary. And when your family's involved in it, it's like saying that it has to be simple and direct and functional is an understatement. If you really stop and put yourself in that type of an emotional pressure cooker that violence is, it's got to be simple. It's got to be really, you've got to be not just good at it, you want to be great at it, but very simple, no added filler to it. And for me, I have for 30 years, I see the beauty in that. I love the process of reduction. I love that in our training. I love when we get new guys in and they've never seen anything before, and that journey from zero to formidable that happens so quick is so exhilarating to watch, and then to watch them go into and have all and just continue to grow as a person, as their mindset, their awareness, their physiology, all of these attributes that just funnel those. And it's just such a streamlined process that you just keep getting better and better. And every time, you never get bored of this because it's such an interesting thing. But I find the beauty in that, and other people find the beauty in growing their skill sets. Like again, 10 years in, I do this amazing jump kick thing that I could never do, and there's beauty in that. Or I do this omoplata when I'm on my head, like I do this inverted heel hook thing that I could never do before. There's beauty in that. It is all based off what you want. And so for me, I know there's a lot of people that what they're looking for is to defend themselves. And the way a lot of systems train people in quote unquote self-defense is to just constantly add more and more and more and more. New drill, new drill, new drill, new technique, new drill. You could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. And people can invest a lot of time in that, and they can get good. But they can get to the good to the point that it's not good. So it's a paradox. It's something that I've seen being in the industry for so long. And it's just worth dedicating a conversation to help people, become maybe a little bit more aware. You got to really understand what you want, what you're looking for, what your goal is. Find somebody who's aligned with your goal, moving in the same direction, and understands the process for how to get you there in the most expedient manner possible, and is genuinely interested in getting you there. My whole goal is to make people autonomous. My whole goal is to get people from zero to formidable. I do that in 16 hours, and at that point, they're free from me. They have, at that point, like that's your foundation. You can go away and continue to work this on your own if you want. The majority of people stay with us, not because they need to, because I still have tons of information. They stay because I understand the process for how to continue to weaponize them and build the attributes in the most expedient manner. But my goal is to make them autonomous, and that is, that operates in contrast to making a living at this stuff. Is to get clients to the point as quick as possible that they don't need you. My instructor, remember the first time when I started training, he said, "I'm going to get you to the point where you don't need me." And the only reason that you would stay is not out of a loyalty to some art or some system, or because I'm spoon feeding you techniques and knowledge and holding the bucket until you have to come back. You'll do it out of respect and a desire to want to just continue to get better and better and better. But it's a different type of growth, and that's always been my same mandate, right? So, anyways, and I guess I'll end it too with the core of my inner circle, which is my personal inner circle group, guys that have been training with me, that are hardcore lifestyle guys, that it's invite only into this group. I think the guy that's been in there the least amount of time, there have been 5 years they started, but everybody else is over 15 years. You does guys 23 years. Like you're talking about having people around for decades. And there's a reason for that. And it's not because we're spoon feeding out all the knowledge and stuff, right? So anyways, that's it. Anything final words from you, Brad?
I did it with the sauce. So.
I did it, and you nailed it, and I fucking loved it. So, okay? And without Dustin here, imagine what could have happened if our analogy guy was here tonight, eh? But
yeah,
tough one to beat.
I didn't create my own analogy. I just piggybacked off of yours.
Yeah, well, I thought about that all day. Like I said, I couldn't wait to bust it out. So I'm glad it worked in. All right, then. Okay, that's where we're going to leave it for tonight, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate it. Again, my only ask, we don't sell anything off this. My only ask is that if you listen to this and enjoy this, help us spread the word, find other good men, help them weaponize, help them to become safer for themselves, their family. And that is, how you do that is by simply liking the podcast, subscribe, like, comment. If you feel we're worth it, a 5-star rating does wonders to help us reach. Our numbers are growing every single week, slow and steady. This is how we're doing it. It's all organic. We want ears and minds of fellow warriors, like-minded people following us. So it doesn't matter how many people we have. It matters the quality of people we have, not the quantity. And so if you do enjoy this, please, it takes less than 90 seconds. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and that would be the best way to help pay this forward and help change our world and our societies by helping us weaponize more and more people. So that's it, everybody. Stay safe, stay weaponized. We're going to chat again soon. Have a great night.